Well, it's been a long day, but we have one more very important discussion to hear. The employee value proposition, or EVP, of the post pandemic workforce has moved towards considering employees as people first, not just simply workers. Research, in fact, says that employee engagement has remained relatively flat since 2016 and is simply no longer the measure for an EVP. The new proposition must deliver a much more human experience. This panel that we're about to see, led by Nisha Springer, Executive Director at A Rose Grows, will explore how companies must evolve to deliver a more human-centered approach around the whole person. They will share how this can be designed to provide an exceptional life experience, focused on the feelings and features that match employees' unique needs. We know the new human approach needs to focus on deeper connections at work. This means our job as people leaders is to act with greater agility, managing employees' needs based on their unique identities like race, sexual orientation, gender, or age, and managing their desires for personal growth, holistic well-being, and a shared purpose. Basically, we must begin to look at how we can meet people where they are. I'm personally really excited to hear more about this very important topic to me, especially as it relates to creating greater equity. Please join me in welcoming Nisha to the stage.
Thanks, Barb. Hello, everyone. We have such a hot topic to close out day one of the 4a's Talent at 2030, Transforming to a Culture of Belonging conference. Our discussion, as you're aware, which will focus on the topic, making way for a more human-centric employee value proposition. To provide insight to the topic, we have three amazing leaders present, my friends Amanda, Jason, and Jen. Now, people, we've had such a journey over the past 2 years with the pandemic, social change, political change, the rise in awareness around inequity and treatment of minorities and marginalized groups, and at a large scale, people rethinking life's existence and purpose. Now, from some of this, or most or all of this, we've had seemingly a dance happening, prompting employers across the globe to rethink the future of work. The war for talent, finding peeps to add value with the right skills, the great resignation, millions of people exiting the workforce across the world, the great reinvention, starting to build and drive an experience that meets the needs of the people. And then the great regret, did I make the right decision? With all that said, employers must rise to this charge and change the way we think, work, act, plan, pretty much everything we thought was the way to go with people. Now, that said, the employee value proposition has become one of the most important aspects for a company to attract, retain, and grow its talent. So, starting off with our wonderful panelists, Amanda, I'd love to ask the question. Tell us about your company, EVP. How does it support a more human-centric experience?
Yeah, so our EVP is all around building connections for life. So when we're retired someday, thinking back to the people that we had the best time with, making an impact. So we're B Corp certified, and I'm really proud of that. And, thinking about the impact we have on society, personally, on the environment, and socially, and what that means. And I think that leads into whole being and thinking about who we are holistically, not, work life me versus personal life me, and really just bringing those three things together every day.
Thank you. And so beautifully said. Jason, I'm not sure if you want to add to that.
Yeah, no, I think our EVP is rooted in, so I'm the Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer at BBDO. And so, oftentimes we forget that this work around diversity is fundamentally about people and how we learn, connect, and grow with one another, right? And so I think that with respect to our EVP, that's where it starts. It's with our people. And so it's rooted in the idea of belonging and really building an inclusive agency. And so we, late last year, actually launched a belonging survey that measured, and we asked our people to rank us across the 4 tenets of belonging. So we asked folks if they feel like they're seen at the organization. Do they feel supported? Do they feel connected? And do they feel proud to work here? And I'm proud to say that we scored an above average score in the middle of a pandemic. When you think about the significance of that, belonging is so deeply rooted in being in person and connecting with one another. And in the absence of that, still being able to score above average, I think says a lot about what we're doing culture-wise. So that's our EVP, is really focusing on people and how we learn, connect, and grow with one another.
No, I love that. And that honesty and candor with lifting the hood to look underneath. Because oftentimes companies, people in general, get a little scared of what's underneath. So that takes some courage. Thank you, Jason. Jen, do you want to share on that topic?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've always defined our EVP as creating the total talent experience and thought of it from a holistic kind of perspective to begin with, but focused on employees really fulfilling their career journeys and being able to do the kind of work that excites them. Over the past 2 years, it's really evolved. And so we've taken a hard look at how our deal has been reshaped through the pandemic. In fact, my team took time out in the end of 2021 to talk about what is the thing that we're promising to our employees and what are they promising to us, and has it changed in the last 2 years? And I think, interestingly, and probably we all agree, it has changed a lot. And the total talent experience includes well-being in a very, very different way. And so we've taken a lot of time to rethink what that holistic experience means and looks like, and how well-being really, really comes to life across every piece of that journey map. And so that's a key part of our EVP that's really evolved.
Oh, thank you, Jen. That is actually a beautiful segue into our next question. Considering the new work experience that we are all working to create or build across the world in different ways together, what do you consider to be a key area of the employee journey, and why?
I can jump in. I don't know if that was directed to anyone.
Jason, go for it. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, I just think that it makes sense to jump in right after Jen, because, what she talked about, well-being is such an important piece. Again, as a diversity practitioner, we have done a lot of work over the last few years in dimensionalizing what we mean by diversity, equity, and inclusion, and kind of the identities, right? We've done a lot of work around disability, for example, but we haven't done as much around mental health. And the importance of mental health as another dimension of diversity. So one of the things that, again, we're thinking about is the organization's responsibility to create a psychologically safe space for our employees, right? Thinking about all of the traumas that we've all experienced over the last few years plus, what does it look like for an organization to take care of their employees and build systems and frameworks and quite frankly, opportunities and spaces for them to feel psychologically safe. So proud to say that with the 4a's, in partnership with the 4a's, we launched a program here internally that we call Be Well at BBDO, that really kind of provides our folks with the access to tools and resources to take care of their mental well-being. That goes beyond kind of what we offer through employee assistance and those benefits. So really kind of support our people in showing up their fullest and authentic selves through a mental health and well-being standpoint. So just wanted to piggyback on what Jen said, because I thought it was incredibly important to highlight that.
Thank you. And I really, really love your passion towards it and just jumping in and going for it. Jen, I know you started it up. If you or Amanda want to round out any comments around this, welcoming your thoughts.
Sure. When I think about the work we were doing around the new deal, and just kind of jumping back to that journey that my team has been on, we've really been exploring the impact of hybrid work on our employees, and thinking about the way that has shifted that experience from a holistic perspective. And some of the things that are more challenging to do in this hybrid work environment have come to light for us. It's harder to be productive and efficient. It's more difficult to have flexibility and stay focused. Culture and inclusion is something that's impacted through hybrid. And certainly being able to provide leadership and support are top of mind for us as we think about the employee experience through the kind of new hybrid work world that we're working in. And we've given a lot of thought, as I'm sure everybody has, around how we work best in hybrid. Do we need to be together a certain amount of time? Can we stay apart, all the time? What's the right formula for success? And I'm excited about, where we've landed, but, we've thought a lot about how it works for the people and how it works for the work. We've also taken the time to think about how it works for the employee experience and the employee journey. And so we're working to think about intentional moments and how we kind of bring people across that journey map through different locations, whether we're together in person or we're going to be apart and together, or apart and asynchronous, and how we're going to solve those different elements through it. And so that's when I think about the employee journey and how it needs to evolve. For us, it's around navigating that shift.
I love it. And I'm hearing it all in terms of the beautiful ecosystem that you're working to create, and creating this journey map for people to be able to make their stops across their life cycle of their careers. It just sounds lovely and beautiful to take in. So thank you, Jen. Amanda, do you want to share anything in terms of what you consider as a critical piece of the employee journey?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that's been on my mind, and maybe it's because I recently shifted jobs during the pandemic, so I've been experiencing what many people have been going through, is, we've fundamentally have changed over the past couple of years, but it's not always, like, it's not new necessarily, right? And what I was talking to a friend, and he said, how do you like your new role and your new job? And I said, I finally feel like I got to expand into this new version of myself fully, in this moment, and the work that I've been doing the last couple of years. And then it got me thinking, for employees who are growing and changing and have been somewhere for 2 or 3 years, how do we continue to meet them time and time again at their new place of growth and not hold them back in this version of themselves that they were a couple of years ago? And I think whole being and the mental health components of it, that's a piece of it, is how do we grow with you and support you in your new identity or this new version of yourself over time.
Yeah.
Cool.
Can I add to that, Nisha?
Of course. Love it. Go for it, Jason.
I mean, so many gems Amanda and Jen have shared. And I think part of what is this, there's an underlying current, or I think underlying theme that we're not really exploring, which is, coming out of the pandemic, a lot of people have lost their jobs, right? Whole industries are no longer coming back. And so what does that mean for the workforce? It means that there are a lot of people that have secondary and tertiary skills that they have never explored and never developed. And so, it's now there's an opportunity for us to work with those people, right? And tap into them and help upskill or reskill people. And I think that can no longer fall on the individual, right? That has to be part of the organizational onboarding and consideration as we're thinking about career pathing as well.
Oh, I love it. And so beautifully said in terms of creating a space for employees to continue to grow their experiences and learning, which is a beautiful segue to the next question. And honestly, I can say you are the dream team, because you are all segueing so beautifully and nicely. But what thoughts might you have around ways to provide experiences and learning opportunities to help grow the whole person in today's environment? Jason.
How did I know you were going to come to me?
Because I just saw your smile. I went for it.
So, I'm sorry, can you repeat the question one more time?
No, absolutely. Just considering, you spoke a lot about mental health, and just continuing to, well, not just mental health, looking at the whole person and finding different ways to grow that whole person. So the question is, considering today's environment, what experiences or learning opportunities might you want to provide to help grow that whole person?
Yeah, I mean, I think I mentioned some of them, just in terms of, the patience that it requires from an organization to, as we're bringing talent on, if we're bringing talent in from non-traditional sources, for example, well, that talent requires a little bit more time of ramp up. We can't expect them to perform right away. So what are we doing as an organization to give them the tools that they need, the right mentorship opportunities? And I work in advertising, right? So much of our business, so much of our learning happens in an apprenticeship style. And so I think that's where, going back to something that Jen said, which is, figuring out this flex model of in person or virtual, how can we replicate that mentorship and that apprenticeship-based learning in a virtual world, right? So that, you know, our younger folks and our more junior folks aren't falling behind. So those are things that we have to think about as an organization. And I think that's everyone from the D&I person to the HR person to the learning and development person. We all have to get in a room and think about how are we designing or redesigning an employee experience that prioritizes not just getting the work done, right? And I know that's a real thing. Everyone's burnt out. Everybody's, you know, got work to get done. But how are we prioritizing building that employee and that kind of future talent so that we're not, you know, so that we're not sacrificing long term. So all of that requires a shift in the way that we think about organizational development. And I think everyone's responsible for that.
No, absolutely. So I'm hearing a lot of diversifying the different experiences and also the meeting people where they are at the different stages, which I think is, you know, absolutely wonderful and on target with, you know, finding different ways to, you know, drive that employee experience. Jen, you know, I know you started this topic off just a little bit. Would you like to share anything? And Amanda, feel free to wrap up with any thoughts you have on this topic.
Yeah, I mean, I think the things that Jason is talking about, you know, they are so critical and so important as we think about the learning journey. And it's become very different from when we were all in a 9-to-5 kind of workplace environment, when we could really see everyone and we can lean in and we can, hey, do you need help? I noticed, you know, the look on your face, you look confused, or I overheard somebody doing something and, you know, I picked that up, you know, I picked that thing up, that skill up. And I personally and my team have felt that the role of the manager has become so much more important and so much more impactful. And it's always been important. But when you think about learning in today's world and in this environment, you know, the ability to be very intentional about who we have managing our people and very intentional about the tools that we give our managers, the kind of exposure to the learning journey, the ownership of that development, you know, are pretty critical to the ability for people to succeed who are kind of part of an invisible workforce at times, maybe more often than not, you know?
Yeah. No, thank you, Jen. Amanda, do you want to share anything on this topic before we move on?
Yeah, the word intentional, Jen, was on my mind before you started speaking. And I think, you know, really being intentional as a manager or an employee about the connections that you're facilitating. I think hybrid work's been great for a lot of reasons, but I think being on Zoom or Google Hangouts all day is super transactional. And some of the most important relationships in my career were built, you know, while I was microwaving my lunch or something along that line. So how are we really intentional even about, you know, the connections we're facilitating and the role that we all play in that going forward?
Thank you, Amanda. And I want to ask just one final question before we get into some QA from the audience. But what piece of advice would you give employers to consider around what to prioritize to help create an outstanding employee experience or journey for the whole person? Jen, would you like to kick us off with this?
Yeah, you know, I think that we obviously have all been kind of moving through this journey around what flexibility looks like and how to empower individuals in new ways. And that's key in this question, I think. You know, there's a shift that we have to make. And that shift has to do with really looking at the quality of the work that's being delivered and being really mindful of quality versus quantity, of face time versus deliverables, and this kind of ecosystem, this new world opens up when we're able to start to think about that, you know, that part of the journey and take our eye off of things that don't really matter, you know, and start to really pay attention to, with a lot of intention, the work, the direction, the accountability, the quality of the work, you know, versus hours and seats and location-based stuff. And I think that's a big part of the shift, you know, in being more flexible and being more kind of mindful of individual needs and approaches.
Yeah. I mean, and speaking of needs, I would just add to that, yes, we're all here to try to make as much money as we can and make a great living and, all of that. And yes, you want to be compensated for your efforts, but as an employer, we got to remember that money isn't everything. And so we have to think about other ways to support our people that are just maybe not as valuable, but could be as valuable to some folks, right? So it might be access to programming or conferences that they can attend that'll help develop their skills, right? Really getting creative around how we are supporting our people beyond compensation. And then on the compensation front, oftentimes they're so kind of head down on getting the work done that we only think about comp and the fairness or the equity around that when someone's halfway out the door. And then we try to kind of figure out ways to keep that person. And so, we need to really think about proactive ways to identify the people that we love, that are high performers, that we want to keep, that are so critical to our culture, and get in front of them, right? And thinking, figuring out how we might be able to, hold on to them as opposed to, when they're halfway out the door. So those are two things.
Thank you. I'm hearing a lot of love them or lose them.
Great.
Amanda, do you want to share anything on this topic?
Yeah, I mean, I agree, Jason, with everything that you said. For me, thinking about equal access to resources for folks coming from underrepresented backgrounds or for parents. When I think about, access to mental health, it's still very difficult for people to access good quality, mental health resources. When you think about first generation workers and education and the people that they're connected to, like, do whatever you can to help provide like a fair and equal way for everyone to get the resources that they need on a daily basis.
Thank you, Amanda. All right, so just in terms of where we are on time, I'd love to leave some time to just ask a few questions or pull a few questions from the audience. A question that I'd like to put out, and any one of you who'd like to answer, just feel free to unmute and go for it. But how has the employee value proposition changed, or should it change as we build more diverse organizations?
I don't know why I unmuted myself. And I guess that's just my way of raising my hand. I don't know. I don't know what to add. I'm going to be honest with you. I think we talked about so much that, you can say all of it, right? All of it is what we need to be doing. Look, I hope that, and I'm going to speak from my vantage point as a diversity officer here, I hope that in 10, 15 years time, my job no longer exists because, that means that we are further along in getting one, more representative of the world that we live in, but two, more equitable at the same time. And so I think that to me is, what I'll always come back to as a leader at an organization is, how are we creating equitable practices and how are we walking that walk? So if we're about gender equity, then show me your board, show me your leadership teams, show me how you're paying women the same as you are your male population. So it really is beyond kind of where we are today, which is very much checking the boxes and making sure that we're hiring diverse talent and all of that. Everybody has diversity goals. I really do want us to start to move towards a world where we are walking that equity walk. And that's across the board for every marginalized group. So that's my hope. And we can do that in a variety of ways, but I think we can get there.
Thank you. And I love that. I'm hearing from you a lot about just basically that congruence between what the organization is saying, doing, showing, acting, being. And I think that's really, really important considering where people are across the world, in what we are calling now post-pandemic, and hopefully we're there, right? But we also have a question about meeting people where they are in terms of stages and kind of what does that mean? And so I'm not sure, Jen, Amanda, if you want to talk a little bit about what it means to meet people where they're at the different stages.
Yeah, I mean, I think remembering that we're all viewing the world through our own filter, and that filter is made up of all of the experiences that we've had. And I think it's being really intentional about, knowing that that's what's happening and being able to be open and see people not through the lens of just your life and your experiences, but for who they are and the things that are similar and the things that are different, and taking that approach every day as you interact with people.
Okay, thank you, Amanda. Jen, I don't know if you want to mention anything on this topic of stages and meeting people where they are. I mean, Amanda, she, beautifully laid out understanding people see things through different lens. They all have a different journey. And each of our journeys is, all equally important. What might it mean to meet someone at the different stages they're at for you?
Yeah, I think that one of the things that we've been doing for the past 4 years, we've been taking time out as a total company, across McCann World Group for something we call Day for Meaning. And it's a day where we turn everything off and we meet wherever we are to talk about what it's like to be a part of our community, to talk about having a culture of inclusion, to reflect on what it's like to work there in a very honest way, to work and we're vulnerable and we're honest, and sometimes we don't say things perfectly. We give each other that chance to learn, unlearn, relearn. And for us in our organization and where we are, that's a part of that meeting where we are and learning from each other and shifting the way we're approaching our culture of belonging, our cultural tenets, the things that we focus on together.
Thank you. And I'm hearing, as I'm listening to you all, a lot about trust and transparency. Might I put it out there to all three of you? What is, one way or an approach to build trust or to expand or leverage transparency to help drive your EVP? Amanda, would you like to just, talk to us a little bit about your thoughts as it relates to, any of this?
Yeah, I mean, kind of going back to the process of the B Corp certification, like we had to be very transparent and have to communicate regularly on the impact that we're making environmentally and socially on the world. And I think it can be scary sometimes to acknowledge where you're at, but you create a baseline and then you build from there. And I think, just be brave, and here's where we are today, and then continue to have rigor behind the actions that you take to improve upon that, no matter where you're at. But I see a lot of people want to hold back on the transparency spot because they're maybe not quite where they would want to be. But in the end, I do think it drives a lot of improvement when you can get over that hump.
Thank you. All right, so just a few more questions, and thank you all for your insight, the amount of conversation around these really great topics. You've all shared such meaty insight with us for us to be able to take some of it and walk away and brain further on it and think about different ways to apply it. But one other question I have is, we all struggle with leaders connecting to our employees. So how can leaders lead from the front? And does mentorship or sponsorship play a role in a better EVP? So, Jason, I'm looking at you only because you said mentorship quite a few times, my friend. But would you want to talk to us a little bit about it? And I'll repeat the question just so that we're all aligned. But we all struggle with leaders connecting to our employees. And so how can leaders lead from the front? And how does mentorship or sponsorship play a role in a better EVP?
Got it. So I think where my mind goes to is this conversation around allyship versus being an accomplice. I'm not going to take any credit for that. This has been overstated, and it's out in the ether. You can Google it. But there's a fundamental difference between being an ally and being an accomplice, right? An ally says, "You go ahead, you go fight that fight. I'll be here if you need me." Versus an accomplice says, "This is my fight just as much as it is yours. Let's do this together," right? And so I think, to your question, how do leaders lead from the front? Well, become an accomplice, right? Think about the fight for equity and social justice, or whatever the cause, as your fight as well, as part of the human race, right? Not just Black, white, whatever you identify as. It really is everyone's fight. And so I think that's where it starts. It's really looking at everything, not as a zero-sum game, but as an issue that we all have to work towards. And then from a mentorship standpoint, point, one of the best pieces of advice that I ever got early in my career was that as someone who is developing relationships, it's
Yes.
more important to make more deposits than you do withdrawals in your relationships. And so
Yeah.
I think that's an incredibly important, simple, but profound statement when you think about that for any folks that are just starting out in their careers, is think about what you can do for the other person versus what you can get from them, and making more deposits than you do withdrawals. And then for folks that are leaders that have probably been in their careers for a while, don't underestimate your ability to actually learn from someone that's probably more junior than you. There's always an opportunity for you to learn and teach at the same time. So I would say those are two things.
Thank you. Amanda, would you like to share just any of your thoughts around what you might want to equip a frontline leader with?
Yeah, I mean, I think authenticity is a great thing to always remember and to do the work and get really comfortable with embodying and being fully who you are, because other people see that and it feels different. And then that opens the door and creates space and freedom for them to do that as well.
Thank you, Amanda. All right, Jen, any final thoughts? Of course, circling it back to you for your insight.
Yeah, I think just building on what Amanda and Jason have said, I think being curious, staying empathetic and using the tools and the voices of those around leaders, us as leaders, our leaders that we work with, I think those are critical ways that they stay engaged, that we can all be really connected and support and lead.
Thank you, and I love it. All right, we heard a whole lot about different ways that you flex and apply, and you're doing all of this really amazing programming within your organization. What program or project are you the most proud of? Anything that you've accomplished in the last 2 years as it relates to your EVP or, just overall programming for your organization. Like, what is your one thing you are super excited and proud to share? And so, Jen, would you mind kicking us off with this one?
Yeah, I mean, I've talked about it a few times today. I think our return to office experience is something that we worked really hard on, and we tried to not just do what everyone else was doing and to listen to our employees. And so we started off with the kind of 2 days back, and we reinvented it, and we've come back with something called the Momentum Office Return Experience that allows our employees to move through lots of different places, based on an intentional work model. And I see more and more people bringing that forward, but we worked really hard to get to that through this period together. And we're seeing great results. Our employees in the last survey we had out there said 80% of them said they had the flexibility they need to have a great life working with us, which is something that we're just super proud of and excited about.
That is super special to hear. And I know you've mentioned it and sprinkled it, but how you package it all up really lovely, considering so many companies are trying to figure out how to get this hybrid thing done right. Or is it hybrid or is it flexibility, which can kind of be one and the same or two very different things. So thank you for just sharing that, and just seeing you talk about it and the excitement as you lit up speaking about it was very inspiring. Jen, Amanda, I don't know, Amanda, Jason, I'm not sure if either of you want to share on which program or project was the most, inspiring, or which connected with you the most. Please feel free to share.
I'll yield to Amanda because I feel like I've shared two of them already.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure Be Well being one of the ones that focused on mentorship. What was the other one? I'm just wanting to label and link back.
Yeah, no, Be Well is the mental health initiative that we launched, and then the Belonging Survey and Index that establish a baseline of belonging.
Absolutely. And you had like a scoring profile and things that you were able to measure how you were doing and how people were feeling in probably one of the most, scary times to measure in the midst of the pandemic. Amanda, do you want to add or share anything?
Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite things to do is a covering panel. So for those of you that don't know about covering, it's aspects of yourself that you maybe hide when you come to work. And I love the post-pandemic world, because you can have people from India and Singapore and New York and Amsterdam dial in, and people share the thing that they hide when they come to work. And I feel like I learn something new every time I do it, and I love to just kind of see everyone's faces and the connections and the moments that happen whenever I do that. And I think it's just super impactful to hear other people's stories and to share your story and be seen in that way. And so, yeah, it's one of my favorite things.
That is absolutely beautiful. And I think at this stage where the world, we'd hope that all employers and people want to give this platform and this stage for people to be able to share their story, to let us in, right? So that we can get into what their lived experiences are, what value add they bring. And even if, you don't align in terms of viewpoints, what goals might you share? One last question. And this question really is specific to what fuels your passion for you to be able to handle the pain and gain of all of this change that you're navigating as talent leaders and professionals. Amanda, feel free to share with me. Just let me know what fuels your passion or gives you the energy and strength to keep pushing through all this change.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me personally, I had somewhat of a challenging upbringing. My mother's Native American, so I spent time on and off of reservation and had just, such a unique series of experiences. And I always motivated myself by one day when I'm able to make an impact and make a change and help guide people in some way, that I was going to do it at 150%. And so I think for me, just personally being able to share those experiences and help people is super motivating.
Thank you. And thank you for even sharing and being vulnerable here with us today. All right. I know I said last question, but I got one from the audience that has a ton of votes. And so I'll put it out there for just one of us to respond to, whoever wants to. And if you don't, I will, whatever you need. But in the hybrid world, if we are talking about the importance of connection, how do we achieve that when some employees are in person and some are virtual? And I know we sprinkled and peppered it in some, but if you want to wrap or share any of your thoughts around how we help our people on the line understand some ways and some tips and tricks to help with building connection in this virtual world.
I can go. I mean,
Yeah.
for me, it's just the gift of your presence. I mean, being on your computer and on your phone and distracted all day, like what a gift presence is, and really truly like being with someone and seeing someone.
Thank you. I appreciate you. And Jen, I know you were going to go. If you have any final thoughts, feel free for it. But, you've shared so much. The audience had some pretty great questions. I got through a few of them in terms of our own that we know we absolutely wanted to dig into. But do you have any final thoughts?
Just that this is an exciting time. And, back to your passion question, I think I'll jump back to that one.
Yeah.
Even though it's been really challenging, I think that we all have this great opportunity to make business better for humans and to create business success through human change. And that's something that drives me every day. So it's been exciting, actually, as challenging as it has been.
Thank you. And so beautifully said and wonderfully shared. All right, so I just want to thank you as panelists for just being amazing friends and partners, period, through this experience. Also to thank the 4a's crew for just pushing and being one command central as we're navigating even this here and now. And then to thank any of the people and all of the people who dialed in for today's session. I'm going to go ahead and pass it off. Thank you. Take care.
Hi, my name is Allison Pepper, and I'm the Executive Vice President of Government Relations for the 4a's here in Washington, D.C. I think that the way that the Great Resignation is really going to affect agencies in the coming years is that agencies are increasingly going to have to meet talent where talent is. And when I say that, I mean there's going to have to be increased awareness that great work can happen from anywhere, and employees are really going to want that flexibility in the years ahead.